Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Jordan Hetrick and I'm the best-selling author of books about how to use action cameras. In this beginner's guide for the Insta360 GO 3, I want to help you get your camera unboxed and set up so you can start using it. I'm also going to show you some of the best settings and share some of my favorite tips and tricks along the way. The GO 3 is such an amazingly tiny little camera. You can really put it in some unique locations for shots you wouldn't get with any other camera. Plus, it's packed with powerful stabilization and lots of other features that I'll show you in this video. So let's get started and check out the Insta360 GO 3. First, let's just get your camera unboxed and take a look at what comes inside the GO 3 kit. You can see in the box here, there's a picture of the camera with the action pod, which is really cool, and I'll show you guys that as we go through this video. Some of the main features are listed on the side of the box here, but you don't really have to worry about that because I'm going to show you these features as we go through this video. And on the back of the box, you'll see the accessories that come with the camera. I'm going to show you those as well as we get this camera unboxed and set up. Also, it's important to note that even though Insta360 makes this camera, it's not actually a 360 camera. It records with a single lens for regular videos, but it's still packed with lots of cool features that I think you're going to love. When you open up the box here, you'll see the GO 3 camera appear to magically be floating there, and that's because it's got a magnet built into the camera, which is really great for mounting it. You can just go ahead and pull the camera off of there. This little tiny camera here is the GO 3 camera. You can see how small it is. It's about the size of my thumb. So it's really small and lightweight, and I think that's really its biggest asset. Also, the GO 3 comes with built-in storage, which is really convenient, so you don't have to get an external SD card to store your footage. It comes in 32, 64, and 128 gigabytes. I'm using the 64 gigabyte camera here, and I've got plenty of storage. You can get about 2 hours of video at 2.7K, so you can get a lot of storage on this little camera before you need to offload it. If you haven't bought the camera yet, you can use the link in the video description below to go check out the different options, but I've been really happy with the 64 gigabytes of storage so far. Next, when you open this flap here, you have a quick user guide, and this just shows you some of the main buttons to use on your GO 3 camera. But don't worry, I'm going to show you these buttons as we go through the video. Also, if you haven't downloaded the Insta360 app yet, you can point your phone at this QR code here and go download the Insta360 app because you're going to need that to activate your camera, and it's just a great tool to have to use with your GO 3. Under here are the accessories that Insta360 includes with the GO 3, so I'll show you each of these in a minute, but just to help you get acquainted, this here is the pivot stand. This is the action pod, which is a huge addition to the GO 3, and I'm going to show you a lot more about this. This here is the easy clip to clip your camera onto a bunch of different objects, and underneath that is the magnet pendant. And I'll show you how all these work in a little bit. Inside this box here is just some paperwork, such as a waterproofing guide. It's going to show you how to keep your camera waterproof. Also, there's a quick start guide in here, and this little bumper that goes with your magnet pendant, so don't lose that. Next, let's get your camera charged up. So go ahead and grab the action pod. And this is actually a little charging station, among other things, for your camera. You can see here on the action pod, there's a little circle here, and it's easy to remember how to put the camera in there if you just line up that lens with the circle, and it pops right in. It's magnetic, and it'll stay locked in there. When you put the GO 3 in the action pod, you'll see a little red light comes on, and that just means that the action pod is actually charging the GO 3 camera. But we want to make sure both the action pod and the camera are charged. So go ahead and grab a USB cable and plug the USB cable in the USB slot here on the action pod. And that's going to start charging the action pod and the camera. When your camera is fully charged, the light on the camera and on the back of the action pod will both turn off, indicating that the battery is fully charged. You can just go ahead and unplug that USB cable. The action pod will get you about 30 to 39 minutes of battery life on its own. When it runs out, you can put it back in the action pod and it'll recharge the camera. The action pod will generally get about 2.5 hours of battery life. Next, press the power button here on the side of the camera and your camera will power on. You can turn it around and look at the screen here, and it's going to prompt you to enter your language and set up your camera. So just go ahead and select your language by scrolling up and down, and then go to the next screen. On the screen here, you'll see that the camera is prompting you to connect to the Insta360 app. And you're going to have to do this at least the first time to activate your camera. And grab your phone and open up the Insta360 app. You can press on this little yellow icon here of the camera, and that's going to look for your camera to connect it. Follow the prompts to connect your camera, get it connected. And if there is new firmware available, it's going to notify you. And I always suggest that you update the camera's firmware just to make sure that you have the latest features of this camera. Then make sure you click activate and your camera is now activated. Now that your camera is all set up and activated, let me give you a tour around the camera and show you how it works. First, I want to show you how the camera works on its own. So to remove the camera from the action pod, just press on this little button here and then pull on the camera's lens. You can pull it out just like that. And the camera is magnetic, so you have to pull a bit to get it to come out. So the GO 3 camera does work completely on its own without the action pod, which is how you can tap into the small size of the camera. And it's really amazing to be able to use this just on its own. So this here in the front is the lens cover for the GO 3, and that's going to protect the camera's lens. You can unscrew it to remove it, but there's not really a need to. And when this lens cover is on there, this camera right here is waterproof to 5 meters, which is about 16 feet deep. You do just want to be cautious when you take this camera in the water though, because the action pod, which I'll show you in a minute, is not waterproof. And you don't want to mix those two or get the action pod wet. There's a button here on the front of the camera, which is to start recording and to turn on off the camera. And it's under that Insta360 logo. It's kind of hard to see. Right below it, you've got an LED status light. You've got 3 little openings for the microphone. And on the back, you have the connection that's going to connect to the action pod. So when you do connect the action pod, that's going to be how you do it. You've also got a magnet built into this camera, so you can stick it on metal objects when you want to mount it. And it also works with some of the mounts that are built for this. To start recording a video, you just press on this little button here in the front. The red flashing light indicates that your camera is now recording. You can move your camera around, do whatever you want, and you're going to be filming. But of course, you can't see what you're filming when you're just using the camera. When you press that button directly on the camera without having the action pod turned on, your camera is just automatically going to start recording in video mode. But there's a lot of other settings that are available when you use the action pod, and I'll show you that. When you want to stop recording, press this button again, and the camera will stop recording. You can also just turn the camera on by holding down this button for 3 seconds, and the camera will power on. And you'll see the light here is now like a whitish blue. Now your camera's on, you can start recording by pressing the shutter button the same way with just a quick press. If you want to turn the camera off, hold down there for 2 seconds and the camera will power off. At first, recording on the camera might be a little bit confusing because you don't know which way the camera's recording and you don't know what settings you're using. And that's where the action pod comes into play. So let me show you that. The action pod actually serves quite a few different functions, such as a remote, a live viewfinder, and a charging case for your Go3 camera. When you put your camera in the action pod, it basically turns it into a regular action camera with a screen on it and everything, but it's got this unique feature in that you can actually take the camera back out and just record with that. Since the battery life is shorter on the Go3 camera than it is on the action pod, anytime you put your camera in the action pod, it's automatically going to start charging it. And you can see the red light here is solid, and that just indicates that the camera is charging. It's great to be able to use this camera on its own, and as soon as you run out of battery life, you just pop it in here and you can continue recording. Also, it's really important for me to tell you that the action pod is not waterproof. The camera is waterproof, the action pod is not. So if you take your camera in the water and you get it wet, you need to make sure you follow those waterproofing tips in that little pamphlet I showed you, and make sure your camera is completely dry before you put it back into the action pod, because you don't want to ruin this action pod. But anytime you want to go in the water, just take your camera, leave the action pod on shore, and keep it nice and dry. When you have the Go3 camera inside of the action pod, it does have an IPX4 rating, so it's splash proof. You just can't submerge it underwater. I'll just show you a little bit around the action pod. So on the top here, you have a shutter button, just like a regular action camera. You can press that to start and stop recording on your Go3 camera. On the side here, you have a power button. And you also have a quick button, which you can use to customize a few different settings and access those that way. On this side of the camera, you have the release for your Go3 camera to remove it from the action pod, and the USB-C connection to charge your action pod and your camera. You also have the screen on the back of the camera you can flip up if you want to turn your camera around and see a view of yourself. If you're filming selfies or you're vlogging, it's really convenient to be able to see what's on your screen, see what you're recording through your camera's lens. On the bottom here, you have these 2 little brackets. That's for the quick release mount, and I'll show you that in just a second. But the Go3 camera also has the same thing. Also, the action pod is magnetic on the bottom of the camera, so if you want to stick it onto a surface just like you do the Go3 camera, you can also do that, which is really convenient. When you want to turn on the action pod and the camera, just press the power button on the side of the action pod here, and the action pod and the camera will both power on. When the camera is connected to this action pod, you have access to change all of the different settings on your camera right here on the screen. After you power your camera on in the action pod, you don't have to keep it in there. You can remove the camera and it works as a remote. So you can see remotely through the viewfinder, and you can also control the camera remotely. I have found that when you move like more than about 10 feet away, the connection gets a little bit iffy, and some of the videos that you see on the screen might not look so clear. So there is a delay on the screen between what you see in the camera and what's on the screen. Really, it's important that when you're filming, say vlogging for example, that you're looking at the camera's lens and not at the screen. So you can use that as a nice peripheral just to make sure you're framed in the shot. But it's really important that you look at the camera while you're recording so you get that eye contact with your viewers. Also, what you see on the screen is not what the camera's recording. So if you lose connection or it looks pixelated, the camera is still recording a nice high quality video. It's just the connection on that screen that's making it look like that. So you've got some different icons here. This is where you can change all the different settings on your camera, depending on which mode you're in. You've also got an icon here that shows the battery life for the action pod, and this one over here shows the battery life for the Go3 camera. can also see the storage left on your micro SD card that's built into the camera. And your settings, this is the current mode you're in. And over here are the video settings that you're using. You've also got different lenses you can change between the different lenses. Also on the screen here, if you pull down from the top, that's going to change some of the general camera settings. You can just swipe over and see those. That's also where you can format your SD card, which you'll need to do after you offload your footage. When you swipe up from the bottom, it's just going to help you change some of the same settings as when you tap this icon right here. If you pull over from this side, this is some more settings that are more in depth, such as the manual and auto settings, such as things like ISO, which can really help you improve the quality of your videos. Then when you swipe this way on your camera, you can see the media that you've recorded and go through the different videos and photos that you've already shot. When you're done filming, you can go ahead and hold down the power button here on the side of the camera and your camera will power off. The Insta360 app is another great tool to use with your Go 3, especially since it doesn't have a lens directly on the camera. So you can use the Insta360 app as a remote viewfinder, also to control the different settings on your camera. When you want to reconnect your camera to the Insta360 app, just go ahead and tap on this little icon right here, and it's going to start searching for your camera. It'll power it on and reconnect with your camera. Once your camera is connected, you can see through the lens as you move your camera. You'll see that the view changes because that's looking right through your camera's lens. So when you use the app, you can see all of the settings that are set on your camera. You can change the different modes, all of the different settings, and everything you want to change on your camera is accessible through this app. The app actually works really well with the camera. It's easy to use, and I think you'll find it very convenient when you want to change those settings or see through your camera's lens. As far as the best video settings, there's quite a few different options, but I'll tell you two of the most useful just so you can get acquainted with those and get started. One of the options is to use free frame video. And free frame video allows you to record at 1440p or 1080p. So it's not as high of resolution as the other option, which I'll show you in a second. But with free frame video, you can change the aspect ratio, which is the shape of the video, after you record. And those free frame videos need to be recorded and then brought into the app and edited in the app. If you want videos that are ready straight out of the camera and you want the highest resolution, switch on over to the video mode and you can record in 2.7K at 30 frames per second or 1440 or 1080 at 50 frames per second for slow motion. Those videos have the flow state stabilization built in, and you're gonna get great videos straight out of the camera that are ready to use without any other editing. And definitely if you're looking for the highest resolution on this camera, which is 2.7K, go with that video mode. There's tons of other great modes such as photo, time shift, time lapse, interval, star trails. There's lots of different options you can use with this camera, and I definitely recommend that you tap into these options because they're going to give you a lot of creativity and a lot of really cool shots. If you are familiar with Insta360 cameras or you've watched my X3 Beginner's Guide, some of these modes might be familiar with you. But if you do need help and a handy reference in your hands, I made a book specifically for the Go 3 that I think you'll find very useful. So definitely check that out. The link is in the video description below. Next, I want to show you some of the ways you can mount your Go 3 camera. Since there's a magnet on the back, of course you can just stick it on anything metal. You just want to make sure that you've got a nice secure connection. For example, if you're going on super bumpy roads, you're probably not going to want to leave your camera just like that. And there's other more secure ways to mount it. But it's very convenient to be able to stick it onto anything metal and have an easy way to just plop the camera up and get a unique angle. The Go 3 also comes with this pivot stand like I showed you before, and this is a pretty convenient way to mount your Go 3 camera. So you just look at this little diagram right here. It shows you which way to mount the camera, which is nice to help you remember. Then you place the camera on there. Now it is magnetic, so the camera is going to feel like it's on there securely, but you really want to move it around to make sure these little clips here lock the camera in place. Once those are holding it in place, you can't pull your camera off. And that's a much more secure way to mount your camera. Once your camera is mounted, you go ahead and remove this cover here and stick this onto a smooth surface. Just hold it onto the surface for about 30 seconds till it adheres. Then you can adjust your camera angle to get the shot you want. And when you're done, you can pull this off of your surface and you can reuse this, which is really nice. But you just want to make sure you keep the cover on it after you use it so that that sticky section on the pivot stand doesn't collect a bunch of dust and dirt. You can also mount the camera when it's in the action pod, just like this, on the pivot stand. So it just goes like this, but now the camera actually mounts upright. And like I said, you just want to make sure you wiggle it so this is actually locked into place and your camera won't come off. And when you do want to take it off, you just squeeze together these little tabs, pull the camera off, and it's nice and free. Next, you've got the easy clip here, which came with your camera. This is a really easy way to clip your camera onto a different surface. So just go ahead and place your camera in the easy clip. It's magnetic, so it's going to hold it into place. And then you just take this little slot here and you can clip it on anything you want. I'm just going to go ahead and clip it on my hat. press record and start recording. And now my camera's recording. I can barely feel the camera up there because it's so light. And you can get a nice POV shot that way really easily. If you don't want anyone to see it, just turn your app backwards. You're ready to go. The other mounting accessory that came with your Go 3 is this magnetic pendant here. So all you need to do with this is just wrap it around your neck. You can loosen it or tighten it by unwrapping this string here. Then drop it under your shirt. Make sure you don't have too many layers of clothing between your camera and the magnet. Then you can just snap your camera on right there and your camera's ready to film. Just press record and you get a nice POV shot that way with your hands. You can see what you're doing and it's barely noticeable there on your chest. Another accessory that I'd recommend that everybody gets is this quick clip for the Go 3. Now this clip just allows you to mount your Go 3 camera or the Action Pod to any GoPro style mount. You can just clip it on. Just like I said, make sure it's locked in place before you go ahead and move about. And then you've got your camera, tiny little camera on a pole like this. It's super convenient and easy to use. But that just opens up your options for lots of different mounts to use with your Go 3 camera or the Action Pod. Most of all, just have fun with this camera and mount it in unique places that you wouldn't be able to mount any other camera. It's so small and light that you can mount it, carry it around with you and not even notice it, which is great for those unique shots that you want to capture. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a like to help other people just like you find it. It really does help the YouTube algorithm. Thanks so much. Now that you've set up your camera, you understand the basics of how to shoot with it and some of the mounting techniques, why don't you go out there and record some footage, and when you come back, I'm going to show you how to edit your footage using the Insta360 app on your phone or tablet. Also, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you can stay tuned about the latest videos that are coming about Insta360 cameras, keep you up to date, and show you the latest technology. Thanks so much. Now that you've recorded some clips, let's go ahead and edit it over here on the Insta360 app on your phone or your tablet. You can also edit this on your computer using Insta360 Studio, and you just connect your camera with the USB cable to transfer the files that way. But I'm going to show you how to do it on a phone or tablet since these files are relatively small and the Insta360 app works really well. You can connect your camera to the Insta360 app when it's on its own or when it's inside of the Action Pod. I'm just going to go ahead and have it on its own here. Go ahead and tap on Album and then tap on this little icon here. That's going to connect to the camera so that you can see the files that are on the internal storage there. So you can just follow the prompts, and then I'm just going to show you some nice quick edits you can do right here in the Insta360 app on your phone or your tablet. Once the camera is connected and the files have loaded, you can see thumbnails of all the videos and photos that are stored on your camera's internal storage. Then you can just scroll through to choose one that you want to edit. You can see icons next to the thumbnail here to show you which type of media you recorded. So you can see there's a free frame video here. These are time shift videos. I'm going to show you how to edit a free frame video since that has the most editing flexibility here in the app. And I definitely recommend you use the free frame when you have that chance. So I'm going to tap on this file and open it up. And this was shot using free frame at 1440 at 50 frames per second. So you'll see when you tap on it, it starts to play automatically. In here in the Insta360 app, there's a lot of tools you can use to edit your photos and videos. And since I tapped on a single thumbnail, I'm going to edit one video here and fine-tune this one video. You can see there's different options here, such as trimming. That will allow you to shorten your clip or select a certain part of it. And if you shot in free frame like I did with this one, you can select on the aspect ratio and you can actually change the aspect ratio after the fact, which is really convenient. So if you want a video in a vertical format, you can tap on 9:16, or if you want widescreen, 16:9, and you can also do a square ratio in here. I'm going to go to the 9:16 right now. Also, because I used that free frame mode when I recorded it, I can change the lens after the fact. So I'm going to go here to the lenses and you can see there's ultra wide, or you can change the perspective to a linear. If you're editing these in Insta360 Studio on your computer, there's also a few more options available. If you recorded using the regular video mode, you'll see a couple of the options are missing here, such as the aspect ratio and the lens, because you can't change those after the fact when you record it in video mode. And you can see there's other tools here, there's speed, snapshots, so you can take a still frame from your videos, just like all the tools that you can use for any of Insta360's videos, except you can't reframe these because they're just regular videos. There's a few more options up here too if you tap on these three dots, and this is where you can turn on and off the stabilization, and you can also do 360 horizon lock. So if you record it in that free frame mode, your camera can lock that horizon, which is great for those POV shots when you're wearing your camera or you have your camera at multiple different angles. It's going to lock that horizon for you and keep it nice and steady. Once you're done making any changes, you can just download it and that'll save it here into the Insta360 app or you can tap on export, and that's going to give you some different export options. Now if you want to edit multiple clips, you can also do that in the Insta360 app. So you just tap on stories, create a new project, you can tap a few different videos, it's automatically going to add them to the timeline, bring it into a timeline and give you all of the editing tools like you would have in any video editing app. Once you've transferred all the files, it's also nice to clear up some storage on the SD card that's inside of the camera here. And you can actually just delete files right here in the Insta360 app. So you can tap on this check mark and then you can select multiple files to delete. That's going to clear up space. Or if you'd rather format the card completely, you can just go into settings here, then go into other settings, and under camera storage, it's going to show you how much storage you've used and you can format the card completely. But that will erase everything that's on the card, so make sure you've transferred the files you want before you do that. I hope I helped you guys get a nice grasp on the amazingly tiny little Go 3 camera. If you need any more help or you need to buy the camera, there's links in the video description below. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time.